All right, I think we are live. This is a little bit different for me. I have only ever usually used Facebook Live, but they changed their structure just a little bit. So we're going to try a different way to do this. So bear with me if I make a few mistakes. A couple of people have just jumped on. So I'm very excited to have you guys here. I'll do a quick intro. My name is Jennifer Truitt. I am an occupational therapist. I work in special needs pediatrics, have for goodness, 21 years, I guess. It'd be 21 years this month. And 11 of those specifically as an OT. So today we're going to talk about developmental milestones and what those look like that you can take and apply to your kiddos and what the future might look like for you. But I also want to give you guys the opportunity to kind of take a glance at some resources that I love as an OT and I use for myself with my own kiddos and have for years, and that I reference out to a lot of my parents. So bear with me really quick. I just want to see if I can look at who's on with me, but it's not letting me. I'm not sure. Okay, well, we'll just go ahead and get started. And if you jump on, just let me know. I'm going to send out a quick chat just to make sure it's running. And we will start learning. See, there it goes. All right, so you're free to answer back if you like. So we'll get started on developmental milestones. Okay, so when we're looking at the first step of following developmental milestones, if you were a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, and have any level of experience of kind of doing that quick Google search of is my kiddo functioning on time, or what stage should I be at? You know, it's very overwhelming. And there's going to be a lot of resources. And if you search images for developmental milestone charts, you're going to get hundreds of them. And they're all going to be slightly different. So what we're going to talk about first is when you're looking at your kiddos, start with what is my primary goal? Am I trying to help my kiddos speak? Am I trying to help them move, problem solve, follow puzzles? Like, what exact area am I looking for? Because every single chart is going to highlight different skills, whether that be social, emotional, motor planning, things like that. If you go to your pediatrician, one of the main things they're going to start looking at when they reference developmental milestones is very specifically, they're looking for those big movements. So are we rolling? Are we walking? Are we crawling? Are we reaching? Are we grasping? And then those motor movements of the face. So what is our mouth doing? Are we following? And what are our eyes doing? Are we tracking, reaching, that kind of thing? So they're looking for those big classic motor movements. And then as a kiddo ages, we may be looking more detailed into the cognitive side. So first, choosing a goal, and then just searching more specifically for that. It's going to give you a lot more direction, and it's going to weed out some of the big stuff you don't really want to look at, or that's not applying to your kid at the time. As an OT, when I come in and I look at kiddos, I'm going to kind of break down what that goal is into little tiny goals. And then we're going to see if they're at step 1 or if they're at step 2 or step 3 of reaching one big milestone. And we'll go into that towards the end of the class on exactly how you can do that for your kiddo, so you know you're targeting the skill they need to move to the next stage. Developmental milestone charts are going to apply to your kid all the way up through elementary, and then you're going to see that transition from those early childhood preschool. We're looking much more at that motor movement, because motor is going to build function, and then function builds environmental engagement. And so you're going to see a shift as you do search if your kiddo is at a higher age. So 4, 5, 6, you're going to see more of the academic base come into those milestone charts. And that can even then increase more confusion. And so we're blending more motor plan that kiddos should have had early with now what we want to see them in interactions. And that's going to build that social side. Your motor on fine motor is going to become much more intensive on those older charts. And there's going to be a lot more demand on finite movement. So for grasping and writing and things like that. So that's going to be a quick look at how to kind of divide those. Big movements, much more emphasized younger ages. Smaller movements, much more emphasized in your older ages. More finite movements, I should say. They're definitely not smaller. It's a lot of brain work either way you look at it. And then the second thing you're going to look at. So you've picked your goal, right? We've kind of looked at what do we want our kiddo to work on based on their age. Are we really wanting our kiddo to roll over or crawl or pull the stand? Or is our kiddo older? We're really wanting them to focus on getting that pencil grasp down so that they can learn the writing and how to spell their name and things like that. So once you picked your goal, that's step one. Then the other thing you want to do is look specifically for an age range. When we're talking about age ranges, they can be very broad. So you may see your child should be able to fill in the blank. And then you'll see between the ages of 15 and 26 months. And that can also feel very overwhelming because you know that anywhere in that time frame would still be appropriate to see a kiddo start a skill. And building on that thought, it's not just having it fully conquered. Sometimes we kind of do that little half a check mark if we have what's called an emerging skill. So that means that a skill can be seen, but it's not necessarily 100% consistent or done on demand, meaning I don't go, hold this pencil, write A. That kid will may be able to elicit A on their own in their own play much more effectively than if I place that demand. So there's different levels of kind of pass fail, if you will, on those developmental checklists. And so what you're going to want to do is use those two guidelines. Choose one specific goal. Don't look at the whole chart altogether and try to check mark your kiddo on all of them. Pick the one and then look at your kiddo on that one particular theme. And then you're going to check mark that age range based on how old your kiddo is. If you have a little one that you know is already delayed, then I tell my parents a lot of times we're going to completely throw out the age ranges altogether. So if you have a little one that is born with a muscle anomaly or is a little bit older kiddo and you guys already have the diagnosis of that cognitive delay in some level, then we don't want to always be focusing on the fact that our kiddo is over 2 and not yet walking. Our kiddo is more than 4 and doesn't have hand dominance. So we want to kind of throw that out. And that's more for the parent to be able to kind of take that breath, because there's some kiddos that are just always going to function outside of that norm, if you will. And so we're going to take just the goal and we want to look at what's the next thing in that box. So throwing age range out altogether. So if you have a little one that is functioning so far, kind of rolling on those milestones pretty accurately, then follow the age ranges. And then that's going to give you guidance on what to be expecting next. If you have a kiddo that isn't, and a little one that you know is not going to be in that typical box for age, then just focus on what is next. That's going to help you. And that's going to help your kiddo be able to be more focused on developing specific skill as well. Age ranges can get confusing on how broad they can be, and some of them can be very narrow. A recommendation I have is look for the charts that line you up in like bars. So you can have a skill over here, and then it kind of says, oh, it can happen at 3 to 4. And then you might have the skill right underneath it that complements it, but then you may be able to see that bar 3.5, and it should cut off. So that's going to give you more of a visual. And there's a couple of different assessments. If you do have a high concern for a kiddo that you think is not developing on those timelines like you would like to see, there's some specific assessments that you can ask for. But if you go to somebody and you say, hey, I really just want an assessment that's going to give me a nice chart, or that's going to give me a bar chart so I can kind of follow visually, then they're going to be able to lock in a lot better on what may meet your needs. And so one of the ones that I use for my toddlers and younger is called the HELP, HELP. And so they have a short version, they have a full version, but both versions are fantastic because they come out with like this big fold out chart that you color in. And so you can go, okay, on all of my questions, my kiddo is at level 2.1. And so you can go and find the age equivalent on your chart and you color that in. And that's really nice to see because you can glance at 3 or 2 and you can see how close your lines get on what those targeted skills are for that mid age. So that's another way to kind of bring down some of that overwhelm or confusion in assessments. So recap, find a primary goal. If your kiddo is so far tracking right on time, use your age ranges to narrow down your search. Again, if your kiddo is not, throw that age range out and just focus on where they're at and then what is next. Not what's next with a big one. Let's focus on what's next in those small steps. Okay. All right. Some of the big ones that I see that you're going to experience broad ranges, but it can be a piece to a parent or comfort to a parent to know that you can have broad ranges. Some of those areas are going to be walking, expressive language. That one tends to have a very broad range when you will see that. Something to look at with a delay in expressive language is you want to look at, are they demonstrating correct receptive language? And I'll explain the difference of the two. So receptive is hearing and receiving. Can they follow directions? Are they able to put their shoes in their cubby? Are they able to put their bowl in the sink? Can they pick up their bear when asked? Can they pick the correct cup when they indicate they want to drink? So are they receiving words and following directions really well? Expressive language is exactly what it sounds like. It's how much they are expressing verbally. So they may not give you a yes or a no or a full sentence. But one of the greatest ways that I was told when mine were little and I was kind of asking a speech therapist questions for one of my own little kiddos is she was like, well, let's take a look at her, no problem at all. And she kind of just observed her about 30 minutes while she was playing. And she goes, oh, her receptive is beautiful. It's perfect. And she was like, she's just not expressing yet. And so she gave me some great tips on how to just move forward. So when you're looking at those developmental charts, you can even be thinking like that. It may not be language overall. It may not be motor planning overall, or gross motor is typically what you will see for that category title. So it may not just be gross motor. So even taking the goal, I want them to walk independently. Within that, you may have, are they pulling up and coasting? Are they turning from like one piece of furniture to the other and releasing? Are they initiating a stepping pattern? So like when you are holding their hands, are they lifting their feet individually? So breaking down those little steps inside that big milestone can be really helpful if you're needing to go ask for help, or if you're needing some more focus to propel them towards that big milestone. Let's see. Another one that you're going to see a broad age range for is fine motor development. Fine motor is probably one of the broadest that I work in. Okay, you're going to have some 2 to 3 year olds that can hold a pencil or a crayon. They can draw those circles, lines. They can follow a basic tracing, and they're going to be very succinct at creating those fine motor table tasks. You're going to have some kiddos that don't develop that until much later. And you could be looking as late as 5 and 6 before that comes together. And part of the reason you're going to see that is, even though on a developmental chart, so when you're looking at your developmental milestone chart, it might say at 5 years old, your child should grasp a pencil with a tripod. Okay, 3 legs tripod. Or your child should be able to manipulate small puzzles using a peg. Again, that's driving that hand inward. The misleading thing about milestone charts sometimes is we lump that all into fine motor, but that is actually building on 2 separate systems, it being visual and fine motor function. So my recommendation to my parents always is, if you come to me and you're like, I just really need them to hold their spoon. I just really need them to be able to scoop. I need them to be able to hold their own crayon. Or school's really pushing me for handwriting and I'm concerned because they can't do it. What we want to try to do is observe them in natural play and see if it's a hand issue. Are they initiating that grasp when they're not being asked to do a specific task? Or it could be an eye issue. Are they not tracking right up there where they need to be to combine those two skills? Are they having a hard time maintaining focus on a table task? It could also be that their core is weak. And so sitting at a certain position actually takes away from the stability they have in their hand. So my recommendation then is don't take a milestone chart and think it is all separate. A lot of times what you see in one category, so for gross motor, my child is rolling or my child is reaching, it is blended with visual motor, it's blended with social emotional engagement. And so there can be a lot of overlap in those. So when you're looking at those, I don't want a parent or a teacher to get discouraged because you're drilling a skill. Oh, we're working so hard on our pencil. That child may have beautiful grasp. If you're just watching them play freely in their room, they may be picking things up that are little. So a great way to do a quick check for yourself when you know, do I need to push this one thing on my milestone more, or do I need to pull back and maybe rethink my whole goal, is if you highlight, hey, they need work on fine motor. Okay, they can't hold a pencil by themselves. Okay, we're going to play a game today. And they do not clue them in that you guys are doing anything related to assessing or watching. Just play a game that makes them use fine motor muscles only. Go picking up little pegs, using tweezers during a game, moving small pieces, doing a puzzle quietly without interference that actually has pegs, and see if they're following on their own. And if their grasp is beautiful, then you would know, oh, my goal for my milestone chart or the research I need to do, it might be something else. And if you think it is, visual or sensory related, then you would know, okay, I probably need to go ask for a little bit of assistance. And so that would give you some of that more confidence to go ask specifically for an assessment. Let's see what is next, because those are the biggest things that I talk to parents a lot. And sometimes there's a lot of confusion because a chart breaks it down into little boxes. So our brain automatically wants to separate every single skill, and that can get confusing. Let's see. Fine motor, like I said, that's going to be a long age range. It's very broad. Let's talk little ones for just a minute. On a lot of those primary or basically toddler preschool checklist, you're going to see that emphasis on gross motor, and you're going to see skills like my child can stack 4 blocks. They can roll over both sides. They can roll from belly to back or back to belly. My child can sit up unsupported for more than 2 minutes. And so those are pretty straightforward checklists. If you have a kiddo that is very consistently missing one of those milestones, and a lot of times it has to do with that center stability. So if we look at maybe a child that needs to roll, and they're not rolling yet, and we have a tendency to want to put them up on their side and kind of bump them over. And I even do this, I want to just kind of give them that nice assist. A great way to test out what you may be looking at with your child, so you know more how to help move their body to create muscle activation, is you lay down on your belly and roll over. What you're looking for is to take a pause and feel inside your body what muscles are contracting and what ones are used together. So are you needing to kind of pull from your center, from your belly? Are you pulling a leg up? Are you moving an arm out of the way? And so then you can take what you're feeling in your body and turn around and lay your kiddo in front of you and see what they look like they're initiating. So a lot of times what I'll start with our really little teeny tiny ones is just kind of roll very slightly, and I'm going to hold at the base of the thigh and just push it up almost like they're bending their knee. I don't know if you can see in the screen. So like they're just kind of bending their knee. So bend, pull forward. Okay. What that does is it initiates them to contract that belly muscle and pull all the way through. You get a kiddo that stays completely open like this on that chart. So arm stays over, head stays over. And you see, I can prompt them, and they're kind of kicking that foot. They're trying, but the top part of the body is not following through. Then you would know I may not be looking at my kiddo just can't roll. Okay. So instead of thinking of those checklists like X's and check marks. Yes and no. It may be more than that. It may not be. My kiddo just can't roll. Maybe my kiddo needs help prompting activation in this muscle. Okay, every time I help my kiddo go, just the arm stays out. Okay. And there can be a lot of reasons that you're seeing odd movement patterns like that. So whether it be reflexes are not quite integrated yet, weakness is happening because they haven't used that muscle set a whole lot. There can be a variety of reasons. But what you can do then is, since you laid down and you felt in your body what rolls first, what contracts first, now you can really watch your kiddo. And if that leg's contracting and kicking over, but that arm's staying back, then you know, oh, let's just fold the arm. Let's see if they complete now, and watch what happens in the rest of that movement. So when we're looking at those developmental milestone charts, guys, we do not want to keep it as large chunks. It is more than my child needs to roll, crawl, walk. There's a lot of little tiny movements that have to happen in between that. And you can really follow that. And there's actually a name for that. If anyone is kind of nerdy and likes to read extra, it's called an activity analysis. And it's something that they stress a lot when you're in school, because when we go in and we observe a kiddo, we have to then know how to take those big check mark boxes, if you will, and break them down into 100 small steps. So at the very beginning, I say, if you have a little one that you know is not going to be on that typical chart, or is currently not on that typical chart, but you want to see if you can get them back in that window, those are the kiddos especially that what I want you to do is break those steps down very small. So it may not be, I want my kiddo to roll. My goal might now change. Instead of I want my kiddo to roll, it might be, I want my kiddo to pull their arm forward when we're practicing rolling. And then we're just going to focus this week on pulling our arm on our own, because that's the one thing missing. So that's another way to look at those big charts and almost like jot a little extra note in between those big boxes. And that can help break things down for you. And that's more focused for you, and gives your child more opportunity to have focused work in one muscle set. Let's see what else. I think that covers a lot of that. With cognitive, we didn't touch a lot on cognitive. With cognitive, you're going to be looking at that as they age. That we talked about that in the very beginning of the video just now. Younger, you're going to see a lot more emphasis on that motor. As they age, then you see more cognitive come out, and that's when your speech, your problem solving, following directions, choice making, you're going to start to see more of that. And social emotional becomes a bigger box in those older age groups. So cognitive skill development is going to get a little bit more emphasized as your child goes over that 2, 3, 4, as you progress up in age. Sorry, just tripped over my words. So let's say we want to do cognitive. So kind of put gross motor on the back burner. I have an older kiddo and I'm looking at all these cognitive skills, and oh my gosh, can I even do all these cognitive skills? Sometimes they can be pretty progressively intense. So one of the things that I think is so interesting is the way that sometimes milestone charts word things. So for instance, my child can stack 4 blocks. That might be in cognitive. And you're going to go, what? Why is that in cognitive? Stacking blocks is gross motor. When we talked a minute ago about skills being layered or pulling from 2 systems, cognitive is really big on that. So once you have your motor down, then you need to be able to follow directions or do a repeated task. So I'm going to stack 1, 2, 3, 4. Focus and attention becomes really big on that. So let's say you have a little one that can't follow that, but they're beyond the age that you should be seeing that. You want to then take and do 1 and 2. Stop. Our goal may be 4 to 6, but can we even just stack 2? Can we put just 2 together? And one of the ways that you can help build attention span or repeated tasks, if you're looking for that set number, 4, 6, 10, whatever milestone box you're working on, is to hold our words. So sometimes in cognitive, and I'm very bad at this, I have to remind myself this all the time. With cognitive, it's an internal working with your kiddos. So they have a task in front of them. They have to problem solve. They have to sequence what muscle moves first, what action happens second, what interaction happens third. And so there's a lot of internal processing happening. So what happens is our kiddo stacks one block and we're so excited they stack. Yay! And we increase the external input. So we've just dumped something into their system that all of a sudden, it starts over. So now our kiddo goes, okay, stack one block. Yay, stack one block. Yay, stack one block. And we're restarting that plan. So if you do, let's say 4. 4 is a really common one that you're going to see very early in the developmental charts, 2, 2.5. They really want 4 to 6 blocks being stacked as we approach that big kid preschool age. And so if you're doing, say that's your goal, if you're looking at something like that, the hardest thing to do is to stay quiet. We're going to give them a command. Do 4, maybe lay 4 blocks out, and then you can demonstrate. So you can do 4 blocks, silent, and then see if they'll copy you. But let them have the opportunity for as much internal processing as possible before celebration happens. Then when you get to your set number, 4 or 6, or whatever it might be, then a celebration can happen. We accomplished it. But the free play moment is going to be perfect for that. And then just stay quiet. And I struggle with that because I want to celebrate every small thing that happens, especially if it's a little one that has struggled with that gross motor side or the fine motor. We've worked so hard on just picking the block up that now we're like, we're so happy. But if you can hold that back, that's going to be a really big benefit for you to look at those cognitive skills listed on that chart and see if it is, maybe my kid was just distracted and doesn't have the attention span. Oh, but they could do repeated tasks. Okay, they technically passed that box, if you will. So that's another big one. As they get older, cognitive gets a little bit, sometimes a little bit fuzzy, and we have to be creative. One of the best ways that I have found with my 3 to 5-year-olds to look at a lot of skills at one time is to just play house. So if we are playing pretend, we're doing cognitive, we're doing choice making, we're doing problem solving, social emotional awareness, baby is crying. And so you're including all of those upper level skills you're going to see on a milestone chart all in play. The second thing it does is if you give them opportunity to feed the baby, pick up the spoon, select the peas versus the carrots, that kind of thing. So play like that really covers every single box pretty briefly that you're going to see on that primary preschool assessment. So I love to just sit and play house, just kind of chilling out and playing together. That one's going to give you a quick look overall at those skills. So again, when we're doing those milestones, you may not see a kiddo do a skill on demand. We touched on that in the very beginning, and it goes back to what we just talked about with internal versus external processing. So if your kiddo, if you say, go set your cup on the sink and it's for the teacher to see, then there's an additional thing for them to process. Teacher's watching me, now I'm half distracted and may not even follow that direction. Or like the assessor, a lot of times assessments can be a little bit skewed in their scoring because of that. It's really interesting to watch the differences with a familiar versus an unfamiliar person doing the observation in front of the child. So quick resources, guys. The 2 things I like the best that I give out to pretty much all of my families in daycare centers is the pathways. I don't know if you can see that on the screen. I'm going to hold it up really close. Pathways, they're great. Again, they break it down, motor, sensory, communication, feeding. They're going to break it down really nicely for you. When you're looking at these boxes, be thinking one main goal and then what fits in between the boxes that may be missing or that you may be able to work on to kind of push your child up to the next level, especially if you've got a little one that's a little advanced on those milestone charts. You don't want to push too fast all the way up to the next level because it may overwhelm them. You can see regression. So then you're really going to want to focus on those little next steps. So Pathways is a great website. All of their milestone charts and checklists are free. You can print as many as you want, and they have a Spanish version. And I love that because it's more accessible. The second one I really like is from the CDC website. They're great. It's called Ages and Stages. They also have their own website, but it's accessible through either. So CDC or Ages and Stages website. And they're great. What I love about them is they have these forms for every age. Your child at 2, your child at 6 months, your child at 5 should be, and they give you just these quick little check marks. And I like this because it creates more focus for you and for your child, because sometimes charts get really long and kind of hairy and they're a lot to look through. So I think that's it. So we've got some resources, a little bit of guidance on how to pick a goal, one goal, how to focus it down to smaller steps than the big boxes you see, and when to ask for help. One big thing I want to leave you with, guys, is never be afraid to go for an assessment. If you have a little one that your physician goes, let's just wait and see, they're fine. The age ranges are broad and you never know. If you have concern and you feel like you need it to be looked at a little bit more detailed, absolutely ask for an assessment. There's nothing wrong with that. And trust me, as a therapist, I'm never going to look at a child that comes to me that has been deemed completely on target and say everything's fine, they don't need an assessment. We're going to take a moment to hear your concerns and really sit down and let's look at what needs to happen next. So please don't ever feel afraid to request that, even if they've hit the check marks. If you have concern, you guys know your kids the best. We're happy to help. So I'm glad you guys joined me today. I do appreciate your time, and I hope that was a little bit helpful. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye.